G'day everybody, Matt Fradd here, coming to you from a very cold office in Steubenville, Ohio, with a very impressive background. I want to share with you some of the most popular videos we released this year. Not the entire thing, but the most popular segments from the most popular interviews we released this year. But I just wanted to jump on real quick and say thank you to you. If you support this channel in any way, if you've subscribed to it, if you've liked a video, if you've commented, especially if you're one of our Locals supporters over at mattfradd.locals.com, I'm really grateful to do this work. I think really, truly, in my heart of hearts, I want to make Jesus Christ glorified. I want to help Catholics remain Catholic and grow in sanctity. And I want to help non-Catholics discover the beauty and truth of the Catholic Church and become Catholic. And I'd say without exaggeration that we get, 3+ emails a week from people who are saying they're converting because of something they've seen on Pints, or that Pints has been part of what's helped them remain Catholic, and I find that really humbling. I'm really, really grateful. I got this little statistic up here. This comes from the back end of YouTube. This blew me away. In the last 28 days, and this is on average, people have watched 291.9 thousand hours collectively of Pints with Aquinas. And if my math is right, that means that in the last 28 days, people have watched over 33 years of Pints. As I say, that's both terrifying and humbling.
Hey guys, Thursday jumping in here. While I was editing, Matt and I decided we should also include the same graphic for the last year, since it is a year wrap-up. So as you can see, we had 27.9 million views and 4 million watch hours. 4 million watch hours comes out to 456 years. So thank you again, guys, for watching, and I'll pass this back to Matt to finish his intro.
Mother Teresa apparently said that it would be really sad if people came to you and found only you. Maybe they came to you looking for Jesus, whether they knew it or not, and how sad it would be if they found only you. So I guess I just want to say I'm sorry. And I know you're not supposed to say sorry these days. Everybody says you shouldn't say that. But I am sorry. I'm sorry if I've gotten in the way. And I know I have. I know I've said things that were false, and I didn't know that they were false, or I said things harshly, without sufficient charity or gentleness. Or maybe I said things too gently when I should have been more firm. I know I get in the way, and I'm really sorry for that, but I trust that our Lord Jesus Christ can use even my bullcrap as manure for your growth, and even the bullcrap of my guests. So, thanks. Thanks very much for supporting me. I'm very excited to continue this work in 2023. And for as long as our good Lord permits. It may be part of his permissive will that YouTube will ban us in the future. And if that happens, glory to Jesus Christ for that as well. Thanks so much.
Question for you, Christian, would be this. The National Organization for Women, my understanding, your organization supports abortion up until the moment of birth.
I'm going to bet you $5 right now that they do not want to address that, and I bet you they'll sidestep it at any cost. Let's see.
For any reason, taxpayer funded. Is that your position?
Straightforward question. You support abortion for any reason up until the time of birth, taxpayer funded. Is that your position? That's a very fair question. She's not assuming things, even though she has done her research and therefore knows it. She's asking. I really am. Let's see what they say.
Well, we believe people have a right to choose.
Okay.
Up until the moment of birth, for any reason.
It's not for our organization or myself or anyone else or advocate to determine where they determine that point is for them, and regarding the gestational age of when they seek an abortion care. So it's very important to point that out. And as for regarding funding sources, right now there is a Hyde Amendment that's in place, and the Hyde Amendment only provides Medicaid funding for abortions under extreme circumstances, incest, rape, and some very few medical issues where it's concerning for the life of woman or the fetus. It's a financial cost on the person who is choosing to move forth their planning and what they do. It is not covered a lot of times under federal funding. Taxpayers are not always paying for
Just to clarify,
But do taxpayers sometimes pay for it?
It does. In California, it does.
Absolutely. Depends on the state, but some states do have where they use their funds for the state.
But just to clarify, this is a really important point. The abortion position, the position of now your organization, is abortion up until the moment of birth for any reason.
The devil came, right? I didn't believe in the devil until that point. A creature came into the room and started to manifest itself, like literally take on a physical form. Matt, I was so terrified that I couldn't even move. And if anybody's ever had like sleep paralysis, right? I have that occasionally. It's a terrifying experience, but this, magnify it by a quadrillion. This was a living creature that wanted me. And
what did it look like?
It was fuzzy. It wasn't like it was clear. And it's not like I'm seeing you.
Yeah.
It was just a presence that started to, like looking through a glass type of thing, or that marble glass, whatever you call it. But it was there and it was starting to get clearer. I was so terrified, I had to close my eyes. I was absolutely petrified and I couldn't do anything. Man, I wasn't a Satanist. I didn't go to like some seance or on a pentagram and slash a chicken's throat and sprinkle blood. No way. I never, but I had dabbled in like Ouija boards. Not because I even believed in it. I was the one moving it, trying to get the girl, like date him, I'm spelling it out. Like, yeah, it's stupid stuff, right?
Yeah.
But tarot cards and all that kind of stuff and just stupid stuff. But the devil, I think, thought that I belonged to him, right? As the songs say, running with the devil, all those songs I used to rock out on. And I was so terrified because I'm like, what am I going to do? Can I punch the devil, right? Am I going to take a swing at the devil? That's not going to work. And I couldn't because I was so paralyzed with fear. I did the only thing I knew how to do. From my soul, I screamed out, not audibly, in my soul, Mary! You know what happened? Annihilated. The devil was completely obliterated, man. And I experienced the most amazing peace that I've never experienced to this day and probably will not this side of eternity. And then I heard a voice, a woman's voice. Again, I'm no mystic. It hasn't happened since. The most pure, feminine, motherly voice spoken to me, not to my ear, and it was like trickling over me, and it said this, Donnie, I'm so happy.
I created what I call a Bayesian analysis of all of the evidence for and against the papacy. And so I use the Bayesian framework because I think that it's a more formal way of doing everyday probabilistic calculations that you do in your own, in your head. And you're like, okay, how likely is this event? And you'll say, oh, it's really likely. That might be some example that you would just come up with. But in Bayesian terms, what you'll do is you'll assign a figure to that probability. And so you can be a little bit more precise in seeing okay, well, how much of an effect probabilistically does this piece of evidence actually have? And so, but what you can do with the Protestant case is you can accumulate all of these different lines of evidence. So they've got the Didache, they've got these different documents, these early church documents, where you don't see the papacy clearly laid out and specific names and everything. And so they'll say, this is a document we would expect to find the papacy in this early document. And so, but there are obviously Catholics who want to respond to that, like Jimmy Akin, and be like, well, no, there's actually reason to suspect that they wouldn't have named specific names in the early church because why? The church was being persecuted. So you're not going to just spell out all the names of the most important figures in your religion so that people can just read the letter and then go hunt them down and kill them. And so there's reasonable responses to that, but nevertheless, I was still being charitable to the Protestants and giving it some weight of evidence against. There's really 3 passages in the New Testament that are sort of relevant to the papacy in terms of giving some positive boost to it, which is Matthew 16, John 21, and Luke 22. And if you look at those 3, you'll see that, I think being charitably, you can say, okay, this does give a little bit of weight to the side of the papacy.
Balenciaga, kind of a luxury, opulence, whatever clothing brand, recently had a couple ads, photo shoots campaign where they had children posing, holding bears that
Look
were
at
kind
this.
of bound, I guess would be a way to put it.
It looks like the teddy bears in drag or
Right.
BDSM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there just are various allusions to child abuse, basically.
Look, what do you mean?
Well, specifically the one that I saw was there's a picture of a bag with papers scattered on the table, and then one of the papers, somebody identified it as a page from a lawsuit, which was the legalization of simulated child pornography.
2 Corinthians again, where St. Paul says that Satan transforms himself into an angel of light and he deceives many people. I think there's a lot of people that work in league with the devil, either directly or indirectly, because it's rooted in the sense of pride. People are inflating their own egos and then seeking power, prestige, money, that sense of control and dominance over other people. And certainly the devil would be right in the midst of that. So in this particular organization, I can see where people that are promoting a certain agenda, especially abuse against the human person, might be in league with the devil. If you think about it, the human person is God's greatest creation because the human person is created in the image and likeness of God. And anything that would distort the human person, degrade the human person, would bring joy to the devil, because the devil believes that when he attacks the human person, he's indirectly attacking God himself.
Did they cut out much of what you had to say? Did you kind of watch it when it released and thought, goodness, they cut out that excellent point I made?
Yeah, unfortunately they did. Well, there was, I would say they cut a lot of stuff for time, so there's probably at least like 20 minutes of conversation that didn't make it onto air, and they cut the points that everybody made. The one thing that didn't make it in that really was a gut punch is that at the end of the show, they brought in this woman who I think identifies as non-binary, but she's a woman, and she has a child who she's raising genderless. And so she got a chance to talk about raising her genderless child. And at the very end, I had a chance to jump in there and address some points that she made, including, she for much of the show, they kept saying that, there's a difference between sex and gender. These are two different things, which of course, and I addressed that during the show, but the whole claim is, it's nonsensical, number one. And number two, they always contradict themselves as far as that goes, because then she comes along and says, oh, well, my child's birth certificate, there's an X, there's no sex listed. Well, hold on a second. But I thought you said gender is what's fluid. Sex on the birth certificate is your biological sex. So now he gets to determine that too. So I was able to call her on that. And then I also asked her, if your child is able to choose his gender, then have you also given him the option to choose his race? And if not, then why not? And she just said that she said she wouldn't dignify that question with an answer. But it was unfortunate that didn't make it in there, but most of it.
Yeah, but it can be difficult to know what to do in that situation. Joel Osteen didn't get snarky. He just started speaking truth. Here's what he said. And he'll be my Joel Osteen American accent, and I'll apologize right after I've done it. And we'll wait just one moment here, but God is good, and he's on the throne, and he's in control. Okay. Bad accent aside, that's exactly the case. Christians, take a breath. God is on the throne. He's in control. Joe Biden doesn't run the world. Satan, though he is the prince of the world, doesn't have dominion over the world. God is in charge. And so we can joyfully surrender to his providence. Even when people commit sin like this, while we ought to correct it, we ought to do so in a peaceful spirit. And that's what Joel Osteen did. The congregation cheered. Oh, that's a perfect response. Again, if I'm sitting with you over a drink at night and my child refuses to go to bed, though I've gently told them repeatedly that that's what they ought to do,
and they get so frustrated because they've just had 4 pieces of candy for some reason and they have no logic. They'll come down, and suppose they started shouting, you know. Well, I'm not going to shout back at them. I'm going to be like, all right, it seems like somebody's a little irrational. It's okay. I love you. Why don't you calm down and then we'll continue this discussion. So the people rightly cheered, you know, and Joel Osteen said, so we'll take one moment here and we'll get started. But I know this, I'm glad to be in the house of the Lord with people of faith. So thank you, Lord, for a good service, he continued, speaking over the shouts of the protesters. All right, y'all, we love everybody. So we just thankfully, you can't win when someone's this kind. Do you understand? What's it like working with Mel Gibson? And did the fact that the two of you share the Catholic faith help the movie?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, him, and his whole experience with the making of The Passion of the Christ and how he just took it upon himself to get that movie made. I really took a page out of his book to do that. I was constantly asking for advice. He had played my dad in Daddy's Home too. Yep. And Bill's first choice, second choice, and third choice was always Mel to play him in the film. And, you know, he also has a lot of real life experience, and to be able to go in and be as raw as he was, you know, he did a fantastic job. And so, you know, he was very, very helpful.
Do you think that Hollywood is surprised that movies like this that take religion seriously do so well? There's been a spate of them the last few years.
You know, I think it'll continue to open people's eyes. And again, we're just trying to encourage people to, you know, especially now, it's very difficult times for everybody. We all know somebody who's lost somebody with COVID. We've all struggled with the whys of the world. We're all dealing with the inevitable, which is mortality. And so to see how Stu handled that with grace and dignity, and how it's encouraging people to embrace those things, and obviously to be supportive and loving and never giving up on people, those are all very important messages, and hopefully they'll embrace it more. I know I've been talking to the studio now about doing much more faith-based content, both in film and television, long form and short form, and they've been very, very receptive. So I think, yeah, you want to make movies that are original stories that inspire people, make people feel really good, and encourage and inspire them and challenge them to do good things. It's pretty amazing.
It is a simple syllogism. Here it is. It's always wrong. And I love what he said too about human life. Notice he doesn't get into the argument of what is a person, because that could have gone right off the rails, especially if Joe was smoking pot. It's always wrong to kill a human life. Abortion kills a human life. Therefore, abortion is always wrong. If you want to dispute that conclusion, which Rogan wants to, you have to take aim at one of the premises. You have to say it's not always wrong to kill human life, or that abortion doesn't kill a human life. Good for him.
Yeah. And then you'll hear in the rest of this, where they ultimately can't keep talking about it, is Joe refuses to put anything forward about when life starts. Okay. He's just like, oh, well, in this one, it seems like it's a baby, and this one, it doesn't. But
okay.
I don't think any of the examples of like, oh, well, how developed is it? You know, can it think? Is it conscious? Can it dream? Can it feel pain?
So for you, it's the moment of conception.
I think that if it's a human life,
when is there a human?
a distinct human life, then I think it's wrong to end its life. And
so you think that do you think that once the conception happens, there's some sort of a miraculous event, like at the very moment? Like you could literally get to the point where the sperm cracks the egg. If you could scoop that egg out right there, would that be abortion?
In the Catholic doctrine a little bit.
I mean, at some point you're going to have to say there was a magic moment that happened, because you believe that we eventually become valuable
when
humans.
When is it, Joe?
Right?
Well, listen,
where's the moment where you think the magic happens?
Let me tell you my perspective on this, because I've said this multiple times, but it bears repeating. I think abortion is a very human issue, in that humans we're messy, and it's a very messy issue. It's complicated. Bill Burr has a very good bit about it in his last comedy special.
The problem with transgenderism is a development from homosexual liberation. So the gay rights movement, you know, it's no longer Gay Pride Sunday or Gay Pride Month. It's Pride Month. They've consciously dropped the word gay because the subversion that was necessary to get gay accepted as normal then applies to all these other deviancies, you know, so bisexuality, pretending you're a man or a woman when you're not, then pretending it's something called non-binary. You know, what does that mean? I'm neither a man nor a woman. That's impossible. You're one or the other. So that's gone. So the gay rights movement, unfortunately, is largely endorsed by all Democratic political leaders in the United States, meaning Democratic Party, and some Republicans endorse it. So there's more reticence, but it shouldn't be that way. There should be much more vigorous opposition. And this is where, as we talked about those bishops who wrote criticizing the German bishop.
And at the end of December, I was actually flying to South Africa at the time for New Year's, and I called her and I just said, listen, I know this is completely crazy and we've just met, but how do you feel about getting married to me?
Just real quick. I missed the bit where there was any sort of...
There was literally nothing romantic had been said up to this point.
Okay.
I mean, literally nothing.
So I missed nothing.
We hadn't gone on a date. We had not talked about marriage or the future or anything like that.
All right.
And and she said yes.
No.
Yeah.
Come on.
She did.
That didn't happen.
Yeah,
You're making it up.
It's all fiction. Fake news. No, it was.
This guy's not even Candace Owens' husband. I thought it was weird that he would refuse to go to Paris. Who is he? What a strange
some random
thing.
guy that just pulled off the street in Steubenville.
That's right. You called her up and
Yeah.
said, "How would you feel about getting married?"
Yeah.
Were you nervous? Were you serious? Or were you partly
No,
was this a pickup line?
No, I mean, no, I was 100% serious.